Hey everyone, welcome back to the NGA podcast, where we dive into all things gymnastics. Whether you're guiding a team, cheering from the sidelines as a parent, or training to reach that peak performance, we're here to share expert tips and inspiring stories that will empower you to excel. I'm your host, Rebecca Grady, and I'm joined here with my incredible co-hosts,
Dr. Ian Kreider,
Rob Axelrod,
Thomas Britton.
And in today's episode, we will be diving into part 2 of our 3-part series of Building a Strong Gymnastics Foundation, where we break down key components to creating this foundation. So if you missed part 1, we discussed all things flexibility and the importance of how and when to incorporate flexibility into our athletes' training programs. Today, we're breaking down what I think is probably one of the most essential, yet often misapplied and misunderstood aspects of gymnastics, and that's strength and conditioning. So strength and conditioning isn't just something we throw into practice when there's extra time. And I know that we've all have seen that done. It's a key factor in a gymnast's ability to perform skills safely, progress efficiently, and avoid injury. But how we implement it matters just as much as the exercises themselves. So in this episode, we're going to be covering why strength and conditioning is important, some of those key components to a strong program. We're going to talk about how to start to effectively integrate some of the strength and conditioning into your own training programs. And then we're going to talk about ways strength and conditioning can maybe be misused in a way that harms our gymnasts rather than helps them. And with that, let's get started. All right, so I think this first question is probably going to be for our expert, Dr. Ian Kreider. But what are the differences between a general strength program and a gymnastics-specific strength program? And what I mean by that is that we can run into coaches and just, gyms in general, who just use strength and conditioning for any time. They just think that if they're doing strength and conditioning, that's being helpful because they're making them stronger. So what's the difference of just kind of throwing it in there because they're like, oh, well, we need to work on core today, so let's just throw that in, versus having a specific program that's going towards what our gymnasts actually need?
Yeah. Oh man, what a big topic. I love it. So I think a huge mistake that coaches make is what you mentioned there, where they think any conditioning is good conditioning. And it does, as long as they're doing something, as long as the gymnasts are tired afterward, as long as they're sore the next day, then it was effective. And that is certainly not always the case. In fact, that's probably not a good case to make at all. And so you see coaches either, it's usually just because of lack of knowledge, right? They just don't know what they don't know, and they see a cool workout, or they see, or they do a CrossFit WOD or something that morning, and they go, "Oh, that felt really good. I'm gonna have my gymnast do that this afternoon." And maybe it could be effective if it was part of an actual training program, something that was planned out, or maybe it's just a complete hogwash, right? And nothing about it was good, and there was no benefit to the gymnast, right? And so I think learning some basics about strength and conditioning can really help our coaches apply it better. And so we can go through that today on, hey, let's get some basic, strength and conditioning 101 knowledge, and then we can help to actually apply that to our programming and start to make some effective strength and conditioning plans.
Yeah, I think that the most misconceived is coaches taking their own workouts and trying to implement them into their gymnast workouts, right? And so 25 plus years of bodybuilding and fitness coaching, putting people at the elite level, on the Olympia stage, the Arnold stage, is a complete different thing than doing gymnastics conditioning, right? Building muscle and creating strength are way two different things. So Dr. Ian, he has doctor in front of his name for a reason. I have an exercise science degree, nowhere near a doctor, but you still have to, as a coach, have to understand that I don't need my gymnast to have, Ronnie Coleman biceps, right? If you don't know who Ronnie Coleman is, go look him up.
That's right.
But I'd rather them to have a gymnast who is as, I don't want to use Simone either because she's just a phenom when it comes to gymnast strength, but I want them to have the strength that they can control their own bodies. So building strength is going to come from exercises that are mimicking what they're already doing in their gymnastic practices. For me and my athletes in 30 years of plus of coaching, success rate has been out, through the roof. Again, like you said, doing a WOD of the day or a CrossFit. Yeah, they're fun. They're beneficial. They're fun for the kids to try something, and you can do your WOD and incorporate gymnastics movements in your WOD for the day. Like I do a circuit once a week on Fridays. Once we get right into the hard thickness of season, then no, I take it out because I want it to just be consistent. But we want to build strength, and right, we're not trying to build strength during season. So why would I want to exhaust their muscles to no end when they're already doing routine training, which is exhausting their muscles? So again, I'm going to go back to just remember, we're not trying to build muscle, we're trying to build strength.
Yeah, Rob, I like what you said about, trying to do strength that shows up in other places, as gymnasts, because we're not just training to be strong people. We're building athletes and gymnasts that need to be able to do these complex twists, saltos, everything, right? It's not easy. And especially as a men's coach with 6 events, I have lots of places your strength needs to apply. So I need to find conditioning to be most effective for me. I can't fit in conditioning for every event in 30 minutes. So I need to find specific exercises that are going to work on multiple events at once, multiple strengths at once, right? But like on the men's side, for example, I have an entire day just dedicated in our conditioning part to ring strength. Ring strength is super important for us. We got to do a lot of support strength. We do crosses with the bungee and stuff. So I think it's important to try and make sure that you're incorporating, like Rob said, things that you're going to see in multiple places in, one general strength circuit or general strength list. We have our same gen strength list we do every day. So that's basically the essentials that we're hitting, like, handstand push-ups, leg lifts, rope climbs. What do I need the most? What's going to build that strong foundation for my athletes to go make their skills easier, make their basics easier. So that way we're not worrying about, are we strong enough to do it first and then can we go try it? We already know we're strong enough. We've been doing that strength over and over again. It's repeated. Let's just go work on the technique we need to learn.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd like to get your opinion though, Dr. Ian, especially the fact that you hit the nail on the head. Those 4 core exercises that we really all love to do, right? Cast handstands, press handstands, rope climbs, and leg lifts. So, you put a number on them, but how long do you keep that number there, right? So we have 2 sets of 20 for, L leg lifts. That's 40 L leg lifts every day. But if they could do 2 sets of 20 easily, then you've got to change it. Because your body becomes used to it. So, do you go 35 and 35? Do you 30 and 30 and make it 60? And at what point do you stop increasing? There's a time where they get to failure also. But I think we need to keep those in mind. You're like, okay, 10 cast handstands every day. Well, that's easy. So should we do 2 sets of 10 cast handstands every day? What becomes overuse as something that's for increasing their strength, because you're going to go to bars at some point that day and they already did 20 cast handstands. Most of the time I spot, and just to throw on top of it before I toss it to you, is that some days I do spot their cast handstands, so they're connected in a row. Other times they do them, so they're up and they get back down, and then there's a little beat, and then they're up, and then they fall off. Then they jump back up. So that's different than 10 cast handstands in a row that are spotted. So those make a difference. And then on days that we're getting ready for a competition at the end of the week, starting on Monday, we do half conditioning. So instead of it's 10, it's 5. So we keep an eye on those things too. But I don't know what you think about increasing those core, those 4 main cores.
Cool. Yeah. So one, we have to look at the purpose behind it. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the overuse stuff, because everybody thinks about overuse injuries for skill work, right? And hopefully by now, whoever's listening to this, you're not doing 50 back walkovers in one day. If you are, let's talk, right? There should be an absolute highest number that you're willing to accept. For me, it's usually somewhere around 10 to 15 of a skill, right? Of most skills, right? There might be some things that you could do more of, but for the most part, it's about 10 to 15 is a good max to have on a lot of skills. So everybody thinks about that nowadays, right? But we don't think about overuse injuries with conditioning. Well, if anything, we probably should, because the purpose of conditioning is to break down, right? Conditioning does not build you up. Conditioning breaks you down. Rest and recovery is what builds you back up again after that conditioning, right? So the purpose of conditioning is to break you down. So how far broken down are you willing to take your gymnast? And that's a good question to think about as you're developing your strength and conditioning programming. So when we look at the purpose behind maybe those core like 4 exercises that you talked about, the purpose of those exercises is to convert what we're doing already in our strength and conditioning programming into something usable for gymnastics, right? Because a lot of the way I talk about it is, I want to create a really strong athlete and then turn them into a gymnast, right? And so when I'm thinking about my strength and conditioning programming, especially as I get younger kids are just coming up maybe into optionals, younger compulsory kids, I'm doing a lot more gymnastics specific strength training, right? Or I'm teaching them how to do the strength training I'm going to want them to do when they're in optionals, right? So I'm teaching them what a good squat looks like, or what a good hip hinge pattern looks like, or those sorts of things in compulsories, but they're not adding a lot of weight to it, or maybe no weight to it at all. And then once we get to optionals, it's like, okay, now we're ready to go. Let's rock and roll. Let's put on some strength. And so we go through this period of time where let's build strength, build strength, build strength. All right, you look like a great athlete. Now let's convert that into gymnastics specific stuff. And that's kind of what I think you're getting at, Rob, right? Is leg lifts and cast handstands and rope climbs and press work and those sorts of things. It takes like, hey, we've been doing like some really traditional weight training where we're doing bicep curls and skull crushers, and we've done lateral raises, and we've done stuff like that. But that doesn't resemble anything in gymnastics. It just lays a good foundation of muscular strength. And then when I do a press handstand, my brain goes, that's what you want me to do with the muscle. Okay, got it, right? And so my goal then is create strong athletes, turn them into powerful gymnasts. And then later on down the road, we work some endurance and that sort of thing. We can talk about what that looks like. But I really want to make sure that we're building that strength first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So let's talk about how you build strength then, if that's all right with you guys. You can build muscle size if we're talking about like Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler or somebody like that, right? We can build muscle size anywhere between 5 and 30 repetitions of an exercise, right? So that's why you see bodybuilders, they might be doing really heavy weight, but they're also doing really high repetitions a lot of times. They're doing like 30 repetitions of bench press, or they're doing 3 sets of 20 bicep curls or something like that, right? Because they're really after big hypertrophy, lots and lots of muscle mass, not necessarily get as strong as possible, right? They're going to build some strength along the way, right? You don't have muscles that big and not be strong, but are they pound for pound the strongest they could be? Probably not, right? When you look at like strongmen competitors, or like world's strongest man competitors, those guys, you look at them and you're like, you are big, but I can't tell what you do, right? And then
Yeah.
they go pull a train with their teeth, and you're like, holy moly, right? You are
Right.
so strong. And that's because they work in those lower rep schemes. And because you can build strength anywhere between, really anywhere less than 10 repetitions, that's where you build strength. And it's not just do 10 leg lifts just to do 10 leg lifts. It should be, I'm doing a specific exercise and I'm tired by the time I get to 10. And we talk about, like, if we want to get nerdy, right, we talk about reps in reserve, meaning I did 10, but I had like 3 more that I could have done before I hit failure, right? That's kind of where you want to be. You want to have a couple reps in reserve and you do 8 or 6 or something like that. I typically don't do less than 6 with my athletes, because then we're starting to get unsafe.
Yeah, that's where that whole leg lift thing came into. If you look at the TOPS program, they had to do 20 leg lifts. And I used to be one of the regional counters for leg lifts. And, they had to come through a thing. They had to touch the top of the bar. So, and if they got 3 in a row that were fails, then their test stopped, right? So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. So really, essentially, they're doing 90 to get to 20, right? So that's where my numbers came from, 20 something years ago, 25 years ago well, let's do 20. Let's see if we can get to 20. And then when 20 becomes easy, well, let's do 30. And so if you can do 30, like you said, and there's 3 left in the tank, all right, well, we did a good job. They could do 35. If you could do 35 and there's 5 left in the tank, but there's got to be a number where we can stop. Like, that's a good number. 35, 40 max is like a good number of leg lifts. Like, if you can do 40, you don't need to do more. You just want to keep them strong.
Right. Yeah. And when you think about different muscle groups have different makeups, right? There's 3 types of muscle fibers. And so you have fast twitch muscle fibers, you have slow twitch muscle fibers, then you have these intermediate fibers. That's going to come into play when we talk about dual sport athletes. But for the most part, we just think like fast twitch is your really explosive power. You have lots of fast twitch in your legs, right? And then slow twitch is more of your endurance type muscles, right? And so your core actually is a lot more a lot more of those slow twitch muscle fibers than any other muscle group, because they're made to hold you up all day. They're not made to lift a car off a baby or something, right? And so they don't have to be super powerful and explosive, but they need to be able to hold you up all day long, right? And so higher repetitions may be more appropriate for core exercises because that's the type of muscle they are. Whereas for legs, there's no way I'm doing 30 reps on legs, just because there's no benefit to that I see as far as how much muscular endurance they need for gymnastics, right? Anytime they're doing endurance in gymnastics, we're talking about high intensity interval training type stuff, right? To where, yeah, they need to do a floor routine and it's a whopping minute long or maybe a minute and a half long, right? There's no cardiovascular endurance that's involved at all in that. It's only muscular endurance if it's muscular endurance. And they just need to be able to go explosive, dance around a little bit, explosive, dance around a little bit, right? And they get to recover. Hopefully, your dance isn't so hard that they don't get to recover, right? But they get to recover in those down times or those in between times.
Yeah, typically when we're doing legs, we do squats, but they're different types, right? Some days they're goblet squats, so it's weighted, and
Yep.
other days it's med ball tosses, and they have to catch and explode at the top. So there's an explosive movement for them, and
Yep.
then there's just plain old, squats where their butt has to touch a mat. Those are the days that I do 2 sets of 30, but they're on my counts and they're quick. So, in less
Right.
than 2 minutes, you're getting 30 squats in. So in my opinion, like that is helpful. Because, and as much as everybody says that, especially you and everyone else, including myself, used to think this, but where cardiovascular doesn't come into the effect with their floor routine. But if you have good cardiovascular output or good cardiovascular training, that means you can recover quicker in this side of a tumbling pass, right? So then people say, well, then why do you? Because I do a 5 lap jog after a floor routine. Well, people say, well, why do you do that? Well, it's cool down after being explosive, and it's a little bit of extra cardiovascular. And so why do I want cardiovascular? So that they can recover between tumbling passes quicker, so they're not tired at the end of the floor routine. So I always say, like, my athletes or my best athletes that I have can do a floor routine and at the end walk off the floor and have a conversation with you. They're not winded.
Yep.
Those kids that come off the floor, and, so
It gets dangerous.
Terrible. It gets dangerous because that's no wonder why they can't make their last pass.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, what you're doing with them, right, is like active recovery. It's like Michael Phelps when he was in the Olympics. Which, man, I try and talk to like kids about Michael Phelps, and they're like, I think I've seen him like a commercial, maybe.
Yeah.
They don't actually know who he is. Anyways, Michael Phelps, especially during that one Olympics where he had like 26 events or whatever that he was swimming, something crazy, right?
Yeah.
He would race, right? He'd get out, wave to everybody, and then he'd hop back in the pool and he would start swimming again.
Yeah.
Not his race pace, right?
No.
But he would just be doing some gentle swimming. And what he was doing there was active recovery. And it doesn't work unless you practice it. And so what you're doing there is active recovery. It might be building some cardiovascular endurance there, but mainly what it's doing, I would think, would be it would be taking that lactic acid that was built up in their system, redistributing it a little more evenly throughout their body and helping them recover quickly because they probably have another routine coming up soon or another event coming up soon, right? And so active recovery is a great thing. I usually don't start it until about level 8, 9, 10, just because before that it's not a hard enough routine to really matter.
Hard. They can do back-to-back routines. Instead of doing the active recovery, then it's just 2 back-to-back level 4 routines, or it's 2 back-to-back level 6 routines.
Yep. Or their active recovery is like go hop on tumble track and keep going.
Keep going.
Tumble some more. Yeah.
Well, it's the same as like a bar, like, make a bar routine and then get off the bar, land, hold, salute, and then go do 5 kip cast handstands.
Right.
Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, you're just kind of building that well of endurance.
And that's where I think that where I kind of try to make my point clear about I'm building strength, not muscle. Like if I wanted them to build muscle and have them look like any bodybuilder, female or male that I used to train, would be those numbers, those high rep numbers with some big weights. But I don't really need them to have big, monstrosity biceps. I mean, the guys on the guy side have these big, huge biceps, and they don't even try. It's just the numbers and the body strength that they're doing that give them these awesome biceps. But they got legs like this, right? But they're really fast and really strong. But
That's right.
just to call it the typical
Yep.
Jersey body, guys walking down the beach like this with board shorts because his legs are this big.
Right.
So what would be some other examples of active recovery for like different events? Because like floor, Rob gave a little bit. What else would you guys consider active recovery for the other events?
Yeah, I'll jump.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Go
I'll jump in. Like,
first.
so on beam, they'll do a full beam routine, and then we'll get like wrist weights, like ankle weights, put them on their wrist, and then they do a dance through with wrist weights, and then a dance through with ankle weights. And I don't give them a long time in between after doing the routine, but it's not after every routine, it's after their last routine. Or some days it's all your skills that you're working on, and you only have one routine, but you have 2 dance throughs, 2 with ankle weights on your wrist and 2 with ankle weights on your ankles, right? So that you're just weighting the actual arm movements and you're weighting the leg movements, but you're not doing the pounding. Same for bars. Make a bar routine and go do 5 kip gas handstands. And for vault, it's a little bit difficult because it's just one, explosion of, 15 seconds.
Yeah, you don't
so
need any real
you don't
recovery
really,
after
you
that.
don't really need any recovery because it's only a 15-second explosion. But
Yeah. Although I did have my level 8s, I had the one little one that I have. She has to put a lot of effort into vault at this point, right?
yeah,
And so I would tell her, I'm like, hey, look, at the meet, they're not going to salute you until you turn around and face them. So if you need a second or two, just walk down a little slower, stand there, kind of recompose yourself, take a few deep breaths, then turn around and salute the judge. She may have taken advantage of that a little more than what she should have at one meet, where she was just down there like, just like getting ready for the next vault. And
yeah,
the judge was like, "Oh, I understand. You got to get in that right mindset." I'm like, "Yep, that's totally what she's doing." Yep.
yeah.
But to go along with what you're talking about, Rob, active recovery is most needed on floor. Maybe bars, like especially if it's a level 10 and you're doing a stacked routine, you're gonna need some active recovery after that. Maybe even a level 9.
Yeah.
But bars is usually short enough to where you don't build up a lot of those cellular byproducts from working
Yeah.
out, like lactic acid. But floor, you definitely do. Beam, probably not. Vault, definitely not. So I would say, like you're talking about, bars and floor would be the most important ones to do that on. Basically, active recovery can be anything that's full body, right? As long as you're working the full body, then you can use active recovery. Probably the best form of active recovery would be like an assault bike, where you get to move
Yeah.
your arms and legs at the same time. The only problem is that they can't do that at a meet, right? And if I want them to do some active recovery
Right.
after floor at a meet, you're not going to bring an assault bike with you to the meet, right?
Right.
Now in college, you might
Why
have
not?
access to that, but yeah, you look kind of weird when you pack that into the convention center.
Yeah, and I find that these college coaches are doing a ton of assault bike, for active recovery after, but they're making it so difficult that it becomes
It's not active recovery anymore. Now it's a workout.
It's a workout. And I've had to explain that to a couple of my college athletes. They're like, "Oh, you should get some assault bikes." And I'm like, "You'll see," because then they're doing weight training, right? So they go to
Right.
lift. So like,
Yep.
all right, well, they're lifting, but I don't train them that way. I could train them that way. I'm definitely well versed enough to do that and certified to do that. But I don't do that for a reason. Look at some of these college athletes and their first time out, like they're hungrier, they're eating more, they're lifting weights, and they look like they gained the freshman 40, right? You used to call it the freshman 15, but they're really not. They're just jacked. Because they got them in a weight room and their bodies are responding quickly. So like I said, if it's a bodybuilder, I want to confuse them. That's great for building bodybuilder muscles, right? But I don't need to confuse my gymnast muscles. I need them to be the same all the time, every day, repetition after repetition. It just like the like bar endurance, right? It's not bardio. I don't need their heart rate to go up as much for like cardio on bars, but for bar endurance, like I'll spot those 5 kip gas handstands after the routine, or even better yet, you want to like incorporate some kind of strength training for bars. So many kids are tired at the end of their bar routine, right? So like, are they going to make they have the dismount left? And it's like, John, oh boy, here it comes. I gotta have to jump in there, right? I got a spot. So then it's 5 kip gas handstands to a dismount. Do that 3 times, right?
Yep.
And that's after your 3 routines that you had to make. In a real world situation, my gymnasts take 2 turns, 3 turns at level 9 or 10 and swing a full bar routine. Why? Well, that's what you do at a meet. And then after, we can go back and go, okay, let's do kip cast handstand pirouette, kip cast handstand pirouette, 3 kip cast handstands, boom, giant dismount, whatever. So now you're incorporating like some endurance for strength training because I want them to be strong. Same thing. When they get to the end of the routine, I want them to be like, yeah, all I got's left is a dismount. Giant, go. Not like, giant. Oh,
Please
gosh.
make this. Please make
Can
this.
we
Please make
this
this.
one over. Yeah, so and I like that with all of them, and same with beam. Beam, it's back-to-back routine sometimes, and floor, I will never do a full back-to-back routine at a level 10 because it's just not necessary. But I'll do a back-to-back with a dance through. So they'll do a full floor routine and no recovery, get up and do a dance through. So that's another form of active recovery. And it's actually with jumps and leaps and turns, just no tumbling. The level 8s, I'll do back-to-backs with a full routine and a dance through after, but they have to do their last pass. Their last pass is usually a full or a layout. Pretty safe. So I have done it with level 10, same way. And last pass is a double tuck, but just have them go into the pit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh man, what do we want to talk about next?
Well, I
That's
was
good.
thinking more of asking like how can this be all incorporated into like a day of practice? Because like when are you doing this stuff? Are you doing it like I know that we're talking about active recovery and how we do that after they do routines and stuff, but how do we do this preseason? How when we're not focusing specifically on routines, like do we do this before practice? Do we do it at the end? Are we doing this stuff at events? Like how do we spread this across, especially when there's that limited time because we're trying to get in all this stuff into one practice. So how do you guys do that?
Yeah, for me, I think it depends on what is most important to you during that time of the year, right? If you have a really strong, powerful team, but their skills are lacking, well, then they probably need to get skill work done first because they would need to put 100% of their energy into that and then whatever's left over into conditioning, right? If you have a team that you're going, man, we're slow, we aren't strong enough to make our kips, we're not making cast handstands yet, our priority has to be strength and conditioning, then that needs to come first, right? And so they put 100% of their effort into strength and conditioning, and then if they can, we do some skill work afterward, but they've got to get stronger first. It doesn't matter if they work skills because they don't have enough strength to do the skills. So in general, that's how I time either before or after practice. Event specific stuff I usually do before the event starts. That way they can give 100% effort on that, right? And then if we talk about kind of in season versus out of season, well, what Rob alluded to there is in season, I'm really not trying to stress their body out with conditioning, right? It's not that we don't do any, it's just we're not trying to overdo it on conditioning. During the off season, you have two things to worry about. You have strength and conditioning and you have skill work, right? There's not a lot more that's physically stressing them at that time. Then during season, we add this third thing called routines. And it's not like routine work is this side thought like, well, I guess, today we'll work some routines, but we're really working conditioning and new skills. It's like, no. It takes over completely, right? And now all of a sudden we're doing so many routines and, oh, wait, I haven't done that bailed handstand or I haven't done that, stutz on P-bars in like 2 months. And we need to work that for next year. Shoot, right? So we still have to work new skills during season. You still have to work strength and conditioning during season. It just has to look different. So in season, it's maintenance, right? I'm just trying to make sure that I don't lose all the stuff that I gained in the off season. Whereas off season is your time to get stronger, get more powerful, and then towards the end of summer or the end of off season, that's when I'm doing a little bit of endurance training, which it really just looks like circuit high intensity interval training work, not running a mile, right? Running a mile is fine if you want to get better at running a mile, but if you want to get better at gymnastics, don't run a mile. There's no point to it.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more. Like yesterday was a really a hard day. It was an intense day, but a good day. So today I'll back off their conditioning. It'll be 50% conditioning because there's no need for me to hammer them 2 days in a row. Yesterday was a floor day where they had to do full floor routine, everything on the floor. Today is a vault day, a flip day. Which in my brain, the more I think about it, it's crazy because they go uphill, and they're working just as hard to go uphill, especially if it's super uphill, than they are to flip. But there's no actual flip and land. So like they're landing on their back, there's no impact. So today will be full floor routine, but you may do your passes in the pit except for your front pass, and I want your front pass on the floor. Or today may be, let's make 3 of each pass into the pit and do 1 full floor routine, and I'll give them choice, your choice. What pass do you want to do? First, second, or third? It's up to you. And they'll go, oh, I don't know which one. It says, you want me to say that? He wants me to do the double. There's no thought process. If I wanted it to be the last pass, then I would have said the assignment is full floor routine with your last pass. Like, a choice is a choice. And it gives them that opportunity to, like, okay, well, I don't have to do my double tuck today. Or, oh, I don't have to do my last pass today. Wow, I could just do my front pass and be done with it. Okay, this is going to be a great floor day. It's a little bit more recovery day for them, and then they're off on Wednesday. So, and, they have next week is level 9, 10 regional. So, and some of those kids that are in that group are doing states. And same for us. I don't ever let routines go, even if it's their old routine and they're getting a new one done, especially over summer. And we'll do sprints without turning off the music. So it's not like, okay, turn off the music, sprint, walk back, turn it back on. No, it's 3 sprints and they're starting in the wrong corner, or like 2 sprints and they're starting in the wrong corner. And now they have to figure out which way do I go. So that's all like mental training along with some endurance training, but just the sprinting. And then, we do some crazy things, like when I'm really feeling like up for it, especially in off season in summer or in winter. Summer, not winter. Sorry, because it's a 7-week season, summer training, and like we're supposed to be building. But how many kids took 3 weeks vacation out of those 7 weeks? How many kids took X amount of time off? So we decided we're going to go Monday through Thursday and give everybody Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So that everybody's got a long weekend. So hope intends that they don't take extra time and take off 2-3 weeks out of the summer, because there's only those 7 weeks. But we don't let those routine things go. Same with like a base routine on bars. Base routine is pirouette, circle, 2 giants to a double. I don't care if you're a 9, an 8, or a 10. So that is your level 8 routine. So you're based on it, right? So we don't let those go either, but I don't do them every day. And same on beam, like those dance throughs on beams, don't ever let those go, because then they're like, well, where do I put this? Where does my full turn go? Where does my flight series go? So as much as it's not like routine training, it's still routine training. Does that make sense? So hopefully whoever's watching this kind of gets that.
Yeah. So Thomas, as a newer coach, is this stuff that you've heard before, or is this kind of new stuff, or how have you incorporated strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got to work under some great coaches in my time coming up so far. But now that I'm running my own program, I get to all right, go put it in real time. Let's see it apply and see if it works.
To make
right?
your own mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, you live it. I'm always learning every day.
Yeah.
But for me, it depends. Honestly, like we talked about the time of the year. That's going to change, drastically where we're putting it. But meet season just depends. I'm going to put it more into my workouts on events, right? My pre and post event rotation conditioning is going to be shorter during meet season. Might do like 15 minutes in the beginning and then 30 minutes at the end, 45 minutes of like actual just, hey, we're doing conditioning right now for the day. But, we'll have our routine stations, like, for parallel bars, for example. I'll have my routines going on the regular rails, the tall rails. I'm always doing press handstands on the side. So I'm always doing something that's going to still be strengthening exactly what we need for this event. It doesn't have to be like, oh, we're just doing pull-ups while we're trying to train parallel bars, right? It's not a complete unrelated conditioning item, but it's something that is reaffirming all those things I need being done. Rings is a big one. Like we talked about, I have a day just for ring strength sometimes. But I don't have time for that every day. I can't set up a whole ring strength rotation every day. So we have our routines on the ring tower. On our low rings, you're doing a strike sequence. After every single routine. Okay, it's not super intense, right? Right now we're not gassing ourselves out. We're not doing a cross or something like that. We just got our support hold, L hold, press handstand, right? We'll do that after every routine you do. We're doing 5 routines, and that's a great way to continue to build that strength. So now I know when we go to a meet, right, that's going to be ready because we've done it so many times in regular rotation. Off season is when I'm putting it more pre and post event rotations, right? I'll do a longer one. I'll do maybe 30 minutes in the beginning, probably still not more than 30 minutes at the end, but maybe we'll put something in the middle of practice, right? All right, let's go do our ring strength rotation in the middle of practice today after we just did floor, right? It's a whole different muscle group. So off season is more so building just that general, like, body strength. And then during the season, I'm putting a bigger focus on the strength that's going to help me have my routines be more consistent. So
yeah. And I think strengthening is kind of a strong word when we think about event specific stuff. I think what makes more sense in my brain is we're actually like coordinating during that, right?
Hmm.
So if you're doing event specific strengthening, it's like, yeah, you already have the strength. Your body just hasn't figured out how to use it yet, right? You have the strength hopefully to do an iron cross, and hopefully now we're teaching the body exactly where the shoulder needs to be positioned, exactly where the elbow needs to be, exactly where the depth of the cross is, right? Because most of our guys can hold a cross at 45 degrees, right? But to get one all the way down here at 90 degrees, it's a lot different. So yeah, so teaching them, all right, where is that actual position? Where do we get set into there, and how do we use the muscle that we already have at that point? So it's just, I think about it more like coordination for that event specific stuff.
Yeah, I think lastly, some of the stuff that we do or that we like to do in our brains because of our own workouts, if you can take those same things, I'll just give you a quick, for example, like, wall sits, right? They're great for gymnasts, but you want to make it more specific, have them sit in a wolf position holding a medicine ball out in front. Like that's where we want our hands out in front over our front foot anyway. So hold the ball out, get your one leg wolf, switch, other leg wolf. Like, oh, well, we don't wolf on both sides. I don't care, do wolf on both sides. But
Might as well.
yeah, you may as well. But so like some of that sports specific stuff that we like to try to incorporate with all these, fitness fad for all of us adults that are still trying to work out and keep ourselves in shape. Not so much, I think, for us, but for those that are out there that are trying to learn or just getting into it about sports specific training, just remember, please remember that a CrossFit workout is not the best and greatest and only thing for gymnastics. Think about your skills for your gymnast and what are the strength and conditionings that they need in those positions. You talked about an iron cross. Well, it's like a handstand. And if you can hold a handstand for 1 minute, that's flat against the wall and your hips are against the wall and your feet are off the wall, awesome. Then that means you can hit a cast handstand and maybe hold it on bars. Like, because too many times in bars, you see it in college gymnastics, like, oh, she was a little short in her handstand. They teach your kids differently. Kip cast handstand, lock. Okay, toe handstand, line change, instead of kip cast handstand, toe handstand, right? So we're missing those things. So incorporate those into your fitness programs.
Okay, so before we move on to the last part of our discussion, I have one question because I think people are probably wondering this because I know that you guys are giving really great examples for event specific things that's like using what they're already doing. Like you said, figuring out where their shoulders need to be and everything. But what about like when you guys were talking about off season, so building up versus maintenance? So can you give me an example of maybe one specific exercise you like to use and like what those reps would look like for building versus maintenance in season?
Oh man. All right, cool. So let's just talk about push-ups. That's one that everybody does, right? So for my off season, if I'm thinking about my strength training, right, I just want to build some good raw athlete strength, right? I want to make sure that I control the eccentric, which means control on the way down for a push-up as the muscle's getting longer but still having to work, right? So I'm controlling the eccentric, and then I do call it like an athletic movement out of it, right? So I can do a nice quick movement out of it. It doesn't have to be the most explosive thing you've ever done. You don't have to like come up and clap behind your back or anything like that, right? But just an athletic movement. Just go ahead and start moving a little bit out of that hole, right? So I want control on the eccentric because eccentric builds muscle really, really well. Concentric does okay, but eccentric control actually builds the most muscle, builds the most strength. Okay, so we want the good controlled eccentric, and then we want full range of motion. Okay, so we don't want a push-up that just goes to like a fist above the ground, right? That looks like a good push-up, but if they ever get in a position on bars or on floor or a weird block on vault where they're starting to get towards that end where they always do a push-up to, they're going to be weak now, right? So I want them strong through the entire range of motion. So I'm doing deficit anytime I can, right? I want them to go all the way to the very end of their motion and then press out of it. So that way they develop strength through the entire range of motion. So so off season, I'm really specific on those things. I really want to make sure that we're hitting those, and I'm very, very picky about it. And then as soon as that's easy, we're adding weight to it because I only want them to do 6 or 8 of them again because we're trying to get really strong. So we're adding weight to it or resistance or having a level 2 lay on them or whatever it is, right? But we're adding some sort of resistance once that gets easier. But in-season maintenance just depends on where I'm at in the month, right? So I'm trying to I can't do hard conditioning all month long, but I also can't do easy conditioning all month long because then they're going to get weaker throughout the season. So I want to make sure that it's challenging during certain times and not challenging towards others. So when it's the challenging time, it's, yep, same exact thing. We're going all the way through. We're pushing hard. We're adding weight. That maybe not quite as much as what we were doing during the off season, but maybe as much. And then during our easy weeks, though, they might just have kind of some standard push-ups, right? Or instead of handstand push-ups, they get to do pike push-ups, or instead of regular push-ups, we're doing wide arm push-ups because they're a little bit easier. And so I make it the same motion, but I try and back off a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was a good example.
Yeah, that's a great example. And just to build on that whole push-up thing, in the off season, I like to, and a little bit in the in season too, to be honest with you, is change their angles. Sometimes it's they're up high with their chest, and then it's up high with their feet. So this way you're getting all of those little muscles surrounding their shoulders. Like Ian said, they get into trouble, then they're not weak in that position. Then there's no injury, right? So that's part of one of my things too. If I'd have to think about picking another one. So I was so fixated on the whole push-up thing too. But but changing shapes in pike push-ups and handstand push-ups, inverted push-ups, decelerated push-ups. We do them. It's down on the down and it's up on the number. So if we're doing them in a big, large group, I'll be like down, and then they're holding 1, and then they push back up, down, and they're holding, and then I'll change it, down 3, down 4, down 5, right? And so you're getting all of those eccentric and concentric contractions, making sure they're getting all the way through. Kind of hard to do when there's a group of 30 of them doing push-ups on the floor together, but at least we're trying, in our brains we're trying. Trying to think of another good example, though.
Well, you might be able to think of a really good example for maybe how coaches misuse conditioning.
Sure.
Because that's something that we want to discuss a little bit too before we go. But if you think of one, share it.
All
But
right.
I think that's another good area is like coaches, like Ian said at the beginning, they'll see these things, they'll be like, see something on Facebook or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, that's a great one. Like, I want to try that. So what are some examples of how we might misuse strength and conditioning in our programs where it's not actually helping our gymnasts anymore?
I'll give you
them.
one. You're saying, that Thomas had his chance to work under some really great coaches, and now he's having his own program of his own. And Ian had said, he gets to make his own mistakes. Well, listen, I made everybody else's mistakes, right? Because I worked under some really great people too, and they make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I still make mistakes, right? So as much as I worked under some phenomenal people, they've really set the tone for my gymnastics. I also learned what not to do with them. And so when it comes what not to do, for an example of misuse of conditioning is meet week. You beat your kids to death with conditioning. And like if I could tell you anything, if it goes back to even the bodybuilding world, you train for 9 months to get ready for a 2-day show, and then the bodybuilder goes out and eats like a cheeseburger and a handful of M&Ms and whatever, and the next day they look more shredded than they did the day before, right? So my goal as a trainer was, let me have my athlete that's going to be on stage look like it's the day after, because they always look better. So what does that mean? Well, that means you got to let everything soak in. So like you're getting ready for this big meet, you got to give time for your athletes to let it soak in. So if it's Monday and the big meet is on Sunday and they're not used to training on Sunday, give them Monday off, right? Train Tuesday, Wednesday, take off Thursday, train on Friday, give them off again on Saturday. And not bring him in Monday, bring him in Tuesday, bring him in Wednesday. Oh, the meet's not till Sunday. Let's do Thursday, Friday, Saturday too. They're like, what are you doing?
Hit all those days.
Let's just get him in as much as we possibly can before we put him in the meet. Like, just let it all sink in.
I'll see the exact opposite there,
conditioning.
Right? Where they go, all right, well, we just had a meet, so let's back off routines a little bit because we don't have another meet for 4 weeks, but let's hit it hard on conditioning. And you're like, well, hang on, what's the purpose of backing off? The purpose of backing off is to rest and recover. You're not getting that done if now all of a sudden you're killing them on strength and conditioning, right? And I would say another mistake, one that I see all the time, and even your gymnasts know it's wrong. And because I'll talk to injured gymnasts, right? And I'll talk to them sometimes I'll talk to about their strength and conditioning programming in the gym and that sort of thing. They're like, I was like, do you do like body part conditioning where you do kind of like legs one day and upper body another day, right? Or do you just kind of do full body every day? And Every time this is the case, they roll their eyes and they go, oh, we do full body every day. Even they know it's wrong. So stop doing full body every day. Your muscles need time to rest and recover. Remember, conditioning breaks you down. It doesn't build you up. And so if all you're doing is break down every single day, they never get the chance to recover and build back up again. And to give you the kind of the science behind it would be, if you work to failure, meaning you literally can't do another repetition. I don't advise that for most exercises with youth athletes, right? For adults, we can handle a little bit better. Youth, I don't expect their attention spans and everything to keep them safe during that time. So if you work to failure, though, let's say you do 20 leg lifts, like that's just as many as you can possibly do. If you'll wait about 2 minutes, then you can do 85% of that again. So what would that be? Like 17, right? You could do 17 leg lifts the next time, right? Because your body within 2 minutes can recover about 85% of what you just did, the workload that you just placed on it, right? Now, to get back that last 15%, it takes about 48 to 72 hours. So if you're at 100% on Monday, you do full body, you've worn them out. Now you're at 85% maybe on Tuesday, right? And now on Wednesday, you practice again, and now you're at 60%. And then right? And by the end of the week, they are toast. They've got nothing left. And all you've done is break them down. And the chance of them, if you broke them down all week long and they have 1 day off over the weekend or maybe 2 days off over the weekend, the chance of them getting all the way back to 100% then next week, slim to none.
Yeah, one that I've made the mistake of is I changed it just this past year, and I've seen a night and day difference, is that make sure you program your conditioning to what you can control the quality of. Sometimes I have like 10 to 15 guys in a group, right? And I want to go do dips on parallel bars. Some of them are just doing like an elbow check. It's like less than 10 degrees. And I'm like, all right, four sets of 8, whatever, right? Just throw a number out there. And I'm like, well, they're not actually getting anything done at all. So if I'm going to do dips with that many guys, I'm going to set up other stations I know the quality will be good of, right? And then I will stay on dips and I can spot the dip to, whatever they need. And I can, make sure I'm actually getting the strength done this time. So that's been my biggest thing. I need to make sure I have control over the quality of the conditioning to make sure it's doing its job and we're not just wasting time, right? Doing things that we can already do. So I make sure I set up different variations of things. Push-ups, I know they will most likely do really well, right? Especially if I've done it over and over with them again. I know they can do that. They know how to do that. Same with leg lifts. Have your legs straight, get to at least 90 degrees or higher. We're going to try and touch the top of the bar, right? They can do that by themselves. The dips, if they can't do it all the way down, they can't do it by themselves, right? They're just going to go down and they can't get themselves back up. So I need to be there to help them with that. So I try to be there for the things that I know they need help with and let them do the things that they can do by themselves well.
And smart brain that I have, well, almost smart brain that I have now, right? When I look at somebody that can't do a dip or can't do a full push-up or something like that, now my brain goes, all right, that's not necessarily a bad thing if they can control the eccentric at least, right? So like on that dip, if they can control on the way down, but they get stuck there, all right, well then maybe I'll have somebody bump them up just a little bit to help them get out of that hole, right? Or maybe I'll let them kind of kick their legs, or I'll let them do something we would call it cheating typically, right? But I would let them cheat just a little bit if I can still get that really good controlled eccentric, right? So if I'm talking about chin-ups, right? Not everyone can do a chin-up, but almost all of our gymnasts can control it on the way down really well, right? And so, control it on the way down really, really well, right? And then if they have to kip just a little bit or something to kind of get over that hump to where they can then pull, great. And then we just lower back down and control all the way to the end. They don't get to jerk at the very bottom, all the way to the very end, all the way to that deepest stretch, and then they pull again, right?
Yeah, do the same thing with rope climb, right? They climb the rope as far as they can without legs, or maybe they can't do it at all without legs. When they get to the top, touch the top, and they come back down halfway, straddle, and they have to go down as low as they can until they get to the bottom where they come all the way down. You keep doing that, and the next thing you know, everybody in your gym's climbing the rope with no legs.
Yep,
so
for sure.
And that's proof positive, because the little ones are doing it now, and it's scary, because they have to. The biggest mistake is that they make them do it, but little kids will go they'll go down, and then they got to go from there to there. That just doesn't work, because they're hanging from the rope like this and they're in a straddle or in an L. That doesn't work. So they need to learn to keep their rope right here by their chest so they can come up, and down. Right. So that's a big mistake too, is that people force them to do just what you said. If they can do the down, I do the down.
Yep.
Do the eccentric.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's a big common mistake.
All right. So I know you guys could probably talk about this
Could keep
topic
going.
for
long.
literally hours.
So easy.
So we might have to do a part 2 of this part 2
Yes.
in the future at some point.
Yes.
But we're going to wrap this episode. And I think some of the main things is that really strength and conditioning is a crucial part of gymnastics, like obviously from this discussion and knowing that we could talk more about it. But the important thing is that doing it the right way is trying to figure that out is the best way to benefit your gymnast. So, strength training is about training smarter, preventing injuries, and building that foundation that supports skill development. So when we integrate it properly, it makes a huge difference. So we want to have those gymnasts stay in the sport as long as we can. And this is a huge part of how we get them to do that. So if today's episode got you thinking about how strength is used in your gym, we'd love to hear from you. Comment, send us a message, or tag us on social media with your biggest takeaway. And be sure to tune in for part 3 in this series, where we'll be discussing skill specifics and what we think needs to be a part of a strong gymnastics foundation. So thank you for joining us at the NGA podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, remember, subscribe, review, and let everyone know about it so they can join in on the discussion. So until next time, stay happy, healthy, and high performing.
And remember, conditioning's never a punishment.
That's right.
Yes.